Today, I'm gonna show you how to cut your own steaks at home and fill your freezer with beautiful hand-cut steaks. So anytime you want a steak, man, we are ready to go. Let's get to it. This is our beef tenderloin. This is what we're gonna start out with today. It is the king of the steaks. It's the most tender. It's also the most expensive. So I'm gonna show you how to get total yield out of this by cutting it yourself. So the first thing we're gonna do is go ahead and start taking some of this sinew off here. You can just do this with your fingers. You put your fingers in and you just kind of pulling this apart. You don't want to use your knife at this point because we don't want to cut meat that we're going to end up using. So when we get to a part that gets a little tough, we're just going to use the tip of our knife to release that. Now I want to flip this over and show you. This is called the chain. Now this right here is a muscle that runs along the tenderloin that is really tough and chewy. We're gonna end up grinding this at the end of the video, so stick around for that, but we are going to have to remove that. So you're gonna take your knife and just score in between. You will see a natural seam that happens in between, and you're just gonna release it. It almost comes together just with your fingers. Again, if we get a little tough part that we can't do with our hands, we just kind of give it a nice cut all the way to the top. So again, this is called the chain. Now it needs to be ground to be edible. It's really tough, but again, we'll take that off and we'll separate that out later. Today, we're gonna be using the Butcher Wizard collection of butcher knives. We have a 10-inch breaking knife and a 6-inch boning knife. And I have great news. It is now available on Amazon. All those cool features that Amazon has, the 2-day shipping, the good customer service, all that stuff, you can get those knives there. Check out the link in the description. Help us out. It helps out the channel. I really appreciate it. Now we're gonna go ahead and start cleaning up our tenderloin. We're gonna use the back of the knife and just scrape so we don't cut any meat, but that's gonna release some more of this sinew and the fat that's on top, because we wanna find this silver skin right here. There's a patch of silver skin that's right on top, and silver skin is inedible. It's gotta go. So we gotta cut that out. You ever have that fillet where you are chewing a bunch, you can't swallow it? It's because some of that silver skin was probably left on there. Again, we're just using the back of our knife because that just kind of scrapes it all off so I can see what's going on. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and take this silver skin off. So what we do is you're gonna take your knife and you're just gonna wiggle it underneath the silver skin and use it as a handle. Like this, you're gonna slightly tilt your knife upward, slide it out the back. Then you're gonna take your fingers, use it like a handle, you're gonna bring pressure this way, and then go ahead and come back the other way. Again, angling that knife slightly upward, sliding all the way down. It's kind of funny, my first job ever in a restaurant was at a fine dining steakhouse, and I worked the saute position, so I did a bunch of the appetizers and things like that. But the cool part was I would come in early and watch one of the prep cooks. He would come in and during the day and he would just clean, 10, 15 tenderloins a day, maybe 20. It was just great to watch a person do it. It was great to learn from a person who does it every day, because then he was just so smooth, and I always someday I'm going to be able to cut like that. And then I worked my way up and did meat cutting there. I did the grills position. It was just a really cool experience for a young 16-year-old. So we got this pretty much cleaned up. We'll turn it over. There's another piece of silver skin right here on the head cut. Let's come back. Same technique, we're just using getting your knife as horizontal as possible and cutting out that piece of silver skin on the back there. This is really not that hard. I mean, it's really pretty easy to do. You just gotta give it some practice. And most of this trim is gonna be used for our grind. I'm gonna show you that at the end, like I said before, but we're not gonna waste a lot of this. Some of the silver skin will be thrown out, but most of the fat and things will be used. The next thing we're gonna worry about, there's a little bit of nodule of fat here in between the head cut and where the tenderloin starts. So we're just gonna kind of cut that out. You can leave as much fat on as you want. For all these steak preparations we're doing today, it's completely up to you. If you want to keep the fat on there, you can. If you want to take it off, you can. You completely customize this. That's why this is so helpful, is because the customization is amazing. You know, some people like it a little fattier, some people like it a little leaner. You get to choose. Just like that, our tenderloin is done and ready to portion. It didn't take very long at all. I mean, this is so easy, guys. You need to do this for yourselves. You're gonna save a bunch of money, and you're gonna be able to make whatever size steaks you want. So we go down, here are the parts of the tenderloin. We have the head cut right here, that first cut. If you like a big, thick tenderloin, you like a big, thick filet, this is where we'll start from. This Chateaubriand right here in the middle, that is the most tender and flavorful of the whole tenderloin. You want that, if you're gonna do like a beef Wellington, you're gonna roast it whole, that section right there, that's your money section right there. And then you have the tail. You can cut that up, and we can make stir fries out of it. You can make carpaccio, which is one of my favorite dishes for the summer. It's a raw beef dish. You can do all kinds of things with that tail piece. I mean, this is where it's at right here. So to go ahead and portion it, it's really easy. We'll take, just to make a nice cut, we'll kind of square off that first part. You're gonna go, 2-3 fingers or so is a good way to kind of portion these things out. You're gonna make your cuts. Make that next one. Now that we get into the Chateaubriand section, now it's a little thinner, so we're gonna have to go more 3 fingers for this one. For a nice, this is probably 5-6 ounces right there. If you want it bigger, guess what we do? We add another, you go 4 fingers, boom, here's another, this is probably an 8 ouncer, okay? Just keep going down. Now, once we get to the tail piece, again, if you have other things you want to do with this, you want to do other recipes you want to go, great. If not, I'm going to show you a sneaky way to get an extra fillet out of this. So you're going to go twice what you normally would. Okay, we're going to take this, and then we're going to butterfly it. So we're going to take, and we're going to cut 3/4 of the way through, and then maybe a little bit more. But not all the way through, don't cut all the way through, and then it folds over like this. So this was a trick in the steakhouse. You want to make sure you can sell as many fillets as possible. So this would be good. We'd save that for somebody who wanted a medium well steak, a well done steak, but that would be that for the butterfly. So that's a cool little effect to get another steak out of it. And then we just have this little piece right here that we can do whatever other preparations. I'm gonna go ahead and throw it in my grind pile, because we're just gonna grind that up and make delicious hamburgers after we're done. Now, here's the tenderloin, boom, done. Next, I'm gonna do a whole ribeye. So we're keeping on this whole steak journey. We're gonna fill our freezer with a bunch of delicious steaks. Ribeyes are next. Let's go. So next we're gonna go into a ribeye. Now, ribeye is the most popular steak cut that you can buy. And we're gonna teach you how to save some money cutting your own ribeyes. You save money and you get the customization I was talking about earlier. Do you wanna make prime ribs? Boom, we just cut a bigger one. It's a prime rib. You want a big, thick ribeye? Just cut it the way you like it. You like a thin ribeye? Go ahead, cut it the way you want it. That's the best part about what we're doing today. So with your ribeye, you have 2 different sides of it. So in the rib section, the chuck is gonna be here next to the rib. And then on this side, you're gonna have where the short loin starts, so where your strips come off of. So what we wanna do, how we tell, is we take a little cut out of there, and you can see this spinalis right here. So this is the ribeye cap. Right here is the ribeye cap. That is the most tasty and delicious part of the entire animal. You can see on one of my other videos where I did 4 different ways to cut up this ribeye, and I did it completely different ways and completely different recipes. It was great, you should check it out. We're gonna start from this chuck end of the ribeye. I wanna take my first cut, I'm gonna take a prime rib off here because I love that ribeye cap of my prime ribs. So we're gonna take a bigger section, cut straight down. We're using, again, our 10-inch breaking knife. The reason we're using this knife is you gotta have a knife that can go end to end, that's big enough to cut this. So as we're cutting, we tilt our knife up and cut through. So here is our big prime rib. And I'm gonna come back and trim everything else after I go ahead and cut all my steaks. So I'll show you how to trim those individually. Some people like to trim from right here, and I trim the whole subprimal cut. Especially for beginners, I like to say trim the individual steak. You're gonna lose less meat that way, and you're gonna have more control over it. So we're gonna go ahead and just start taking ribeyes. Again, using our breaking knife, sliding it all the way through, moving your arm up, cutting all the way through, and there is your nice ribeye. And again, we're gonna come back and clean this one up. People ask, where do we get these things? How do I get this big cut of meat? Well, this is a whole ribeye. You can get it from Costco, you can get it from Sam's, you can get it from a lot of membership stores. Also, a place I like to go is called the Chef's Store. It's the US Foods version of Sam's. So you can go and open to the public and get big cuts of meat. But any place that cuts their own ribeyes, you can go back and ask them if you can buy a whole ribeye. But this is about as simple as it gets. We're just cutting our steaks. You'll see as you go down the ribeye, that spinalis gets smaller and smaller, and you also have, it's a leaner cut. So as you get towards the strip loin, you're gonna see it looks more like a New York strip than it does a ribeye. So we can try to clean this up, or we can throw it in our grind pile if you really look at the steak and you're like, oh, this is not a pretty steak. I need only pretty steaks. Well, then we can put it in our grind pile. All right, so now we're gonna go back through all of our steaks and we're gonna just trim them up. So we have our big ribeye right here, and we're just gonna trim the fat. Again, this is completely up to you. If you want to keep a lot of fat on there, if you want to make it more lean, it's up to you. Everything's going to get used and put in our grind pile, and we're going to grind it up into great hamburgers that are going to have a little bit of ribeye, a little bit of strip, a little bit of tenderloin. They're going to be the best. It's going to be the best ground beef you've ever had in your life. But again, we just clean this steak up. And again, this is more the leaner cut like I was talking about as you get closer to the strip loin end. But there you go, nice and clean. Man, this is a pretty steak right here. Yeah, how much are you guys gonna pay for this? This is a pretty looking steak. And you did it yourself. On the bottom here, sometimes you're gonna get a little bit of connective tissue. This is where the ribs were actually connected to the rib eye. So we're gonna go ahead, you take a little bit of that off. It can be a little chewy at times. Again, another beautiful looking steak. Have you seen what you get at the grocery store lately? They don't take the time and care to make their steaks look good. You get a chance to learn how to do it yourself and make it look nice. We'll go ahead and look at our prime rib too. So again, this is untrimmed. So we're gonna go ahead and take some of this part off. Just kind of look at it and where would you want to clean up a little bit? Take that, man, I kind of like the way it's looking right now. We'll kind of just shape it up a little bit because this will be tied up. It'll be tied up like this, so it's all nice and compact, and then it'll be good to go. Here, take a little bit of this off the top. You don't want to take all the fat off, because again, it's a ribeye. We want a little bit of a fattier cut. That's what we got the ribeye for, so. And we can just tie that up right there. Beautiful prime rib. All right, so here's what we got. We got about 10 delicious ribeye steaks. We got a good sized prime rib, about 4 pounds probably. I mean, this is all the things we got out of this ribeye. Again, it only took us a few minutes. You just kind of cut it, trim it, and you're good to go. So next, we're gonna do New York strips. So this is one of my personal favorites. I love a New York strip. And don't forget to stick around because we are going to be grinding all of the trim. So everything we've been cutting, it's gonna get into our grind and we're gonna make delicious hamburgers out of it. So stay with us. Let's go to the New York strip next. Next, we're gonna cut a New York strip. Now, New York strip is one of my favorites. I love it. It is leaner than a ribeye, but it has more flavor than a tenderloin. It's kind of that one that sits right in the middle. That's why I love it. We're gonna go ahead and just start cutting steaks out of it. It's really, really easy. So this first cut is gonna be just a rounding off cut, just to make sure we're starting with a nice, make sure we're starting off with a nice, clean edge. If you're just doing this one at a time, I would suggest you put this in the refrigerator, keep in the refrigerator until you're ready to cut. This has gotten a little bit warm under all the lights and everything, so it's gonna be a little bit more tricky, but again, the colder you can get it, the better. We're gonna go ahead and cut that 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches, however you wanna do it. If you watch my videos for any length of time, you know that I'm horrible at measurements, so just measure your own to whatever you like, okay? I'll tell people that that's 1.5 inches, and then I see in the comments, that looks more like 3 inches. Like, I don't know, I can't do this stuff. And again, like the ribeye, we are gonna come back and clean up each individual steak. I did an individual video on this, on how to make some different cuts out of the strip, like a Manhattan fillet, which is like where you basically cut down the center of it and you can have a big chunk that is just, it's called a Manhattan fillet. It's still a strip, but it kind of looks like a fillet, and it's really good too. So check out that one in the description also. Now, I wanted to show you something right here. As you cut down the New York strip, there is a nodule of top sirloin that sits right on top. Now, it still makes a good steak. It's just top sirloin and not New York strip. So you can see this little eye right here, this little circle. It is starting to form, and as we go more and more, it's going to get bigger and bigger. Now, I tell you this because you need to look out for it when you're buying cut steaks at the grocery store. Sometimes they will try to sneak in one of these, New York strips that has a big nodule of top sirloin in there. You're paying for New York strip, but it's actually, 20% top sirloin. So keep that in mind when you're buying them from the grocery store. For this preparation, it doesn't really matter because it's still gonna be a good steak and you bought the whole thing. But some people, you might want to grind it. You might want to grind the whole thing. It's going to make your grind even better, but you can make a good steak. You can see at the very end, look how big that is right there. Look how big that top sirloin is right there. So, I mean, it just depends on what you're looking for. But again, look out when you're going to the grocery store. All right, so now we're going to come back through and trim them up. And then that's it. So a New York strip, it has that nice 1/4 inch of fat along the top. That's what it's known for. So we want to make sure we don't take all the fat off, but take some of it off. And again, all that goes into our grind. It's gonna make it better. I'm gonna do it this way. I'll leave that on there. And at this point, we're just trying to make a good looking steak here. That's all we're trying to do. You don't want a ton of fat on there because it's not gonna render as you cook it, and it's gonna just be big chunks of uncooked fat, which does not sound good at all, does it? Another thing I'll do is I'll make sure you flip it over so you can look at it from both sides, because sometimes the fat isn't even across both sides. So a good looking steak. On some of these, you can see there's a piece of connective tissue right here. If you look really, really close, it looks almost like it's like translucent, okay? So you can almost like see through it. That's a big piece of connective tissue that when it comes to that corner, it's really hard to chew through. So we're just gonna take that and take that part off. It's not on all the steaks, but you just kind of take a look and make sure to get that off, because you don't want that chewy part of that steak. That is not a good steak. All right, here we go. We got 12 New York strip steaks that came off of that one. Man, all great quality. Like I said, I love a New York strip steak. It's one of my favorites, and this is a way to get a bunch of them at one time We'll bag them up, we'll put them in the freezer. I mean, this is great. So you always have a steak when you're ready. So far, we've gone through the tenderloin, the ribeye, the New York strip, and now we're gonna grind. So we're gonna take all of our trim from all these projects, we're gonna add a little more meat to it and make the best hamburgers you've ever had in your life. Let's get to it. All right, so now this is the secret. Now this is how we're gonna save a bunch of money. We cut all those different cuts of meat, but now we're gonna use the trim and we're gonna get entire utilization of the whole thing. So we're gonna make ground beef with the rest of it. So in this bowl, I have the trim from the tenderloin, the strips, the ribeyes, and we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add a little bit of sirloin to it. So I went ahead at Costco and I bought a nice lean sirloin, and that'll lean out our ground beef. Again, customization, you want a fattier ground beef, you can make it to whatever specs you want. I'm gonna add a little more lean sirloin in there to lean it out. This was our chain, remember from earlier, and it does have some silver skin over here, so we're gonna go ahead and cut that out. You can just see that just needs to be, some of it needs to be cut out. The thing with this chain is it's just a great, the flavor is awesome of this. It has great beefy flavor, it's just really tough. So that's why we grind it. You can't mess it up. That silver skin goes all the way through it. So if you leave some, that's okay, we're gonna grind it, but you wanna get the big pieces out. Back when I was working at that steakhouse I was talking about earlier, we would, because we had so many of these chain pieces, they would go ahead and trim all these out and we'd make hamburgers and that would be family meal. So before the shift would start, we would use that for ground beef to make a meal for all the staff. So it was always delicious. It's good practice for taking off silver skin because you don't really care how it looks. So if you gouge a little bit of meat out of there, it's still okay. This hard fat right here, we're still gonna use it. So that does not have to be taken off. We're gonna prepare this for the grinder. So you're looking at like 1-inch pieces or so, just enough so it fits down the grinder chute. We're gonna go through all of our trim and we're gonna cut it up into 1-inch pieces and then send it through the grinder. What makes this ground beef so good is like, because we have all the steak cuts in there. So you have tenderloin, you got strip in there, you got ribeyes in there. That's why the ground beef at the butcher shop tastes better than the one at the grocery store. That's how they're making their money. They are grinding up all the trim and adding it to their ground beef. If you're not doing all 3 of these projects on the same day, you might just take the fat pieces and just put them in a Ziploc bag, throw it in the freezer, and when you collect enough of them, then you go ahead and make your ground beef. Because we're looking for like an 80-20 ratio for this ground beef I'm gonna do. So I'm not gonna end up using all of this fat because I just wanna make sure that ratio between fat and lean is just about perfect. So we can always add more fat later. It's really hard to go back and add more lean to it. And on the lean cut that you choose, I like sirloin, chuck, something like that, something that's a little bit cheaper because we are grinding it, it doesn't matter how tough it is. So we just want that extra flavor and that extra leanness to our ground beef. Now we're gonna start grinding. So I broke out the big meat grinder this time because we are gonna do a lot here. And what we're gonna go through 2 times. So that's the difference between grinding your own meat and what you get at the grocery store. The grocery store puts it through 2 or 3 times. So you can't just put it through once. You gotta put it in at least 2 times to get that nice consistency of ground beef. So we're just gonna put it through once, put it through again, and then we'll be done. Plug it in. Make sure to plug it in. That always helps. Sorry, here we go. Now, take 2. Here we go. So as I look at this right here, it actually came out pretty lean. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna add a couple more of those pieces of fat from our ribeye and just kind of give it a little, this is probably 90-10, and I want that 80-20 ratio of fat to lean. It's kind of a feel. You kind of feel it, you look at it. Does it look like the one you get in the grocery store? Like, just look at that color and you just kind of, it's more an art than a science. But if you're gonna add more fat to it, you wanna do it this first step, because then we'll mix it all together as it goes through the grinder the second time. So you just kind of, you go by feel. You could get crazy if you wanted to and weigh the fat and the lean together and get that nice percentages, but you might be a crazy person if you do all that for this ground beef. Let's go over what we cut today. I got 10 ribeyes, I got a prime rib. We got 7 beef tenderloin steaks. We got, we got 12 New York strip steaks and about 13 pounds or so of ground beef. And all of that, I know you guys are asking yourself, well, how much did I spend on it? Well, I'm gonna tell you. For all this meat, we spent a total of $449.91. So, well, this is way cheaper than it would be if you bought each one of these steaks individually at the grocery store. And it's also the steaks that it's the meat that you want to eat, okay? We got steaks and we got ground beef. So this is the premium way to fill your freezer with cutting all the meat yourself. Check the link in the description for all the tools that we use today, and YouTube thinks you're gonna like this video right here. So click on that one next. Let me know if they were right.